Stephanie White did not tiptoe around her point. The Indiana Fever head coach walked into the interview room after another emotionally draining semifinal against the Las Vegas Aces and said what she felt needed to be said. "I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games," White began. "A -3-1 free throw discrepancy. And I might be able to understand it if we were just chucking threes, but we're not. We're attacking the rim. And the disrespect right now for our team has been pretty unbelievable. So, it's disappointing." What might have been a footnote in another postseason became a catalyst in this one. The Indiana Fever versus Las Vegas Aces series, already charged with storylines, defending champions on one side, a resurgent underdog on the other, now came with a referendum on WNBA officiating that no one could ignore. The free throw disparity was not an abstract complaint. It was written across the box scores and played out in real time inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse and Michelob Ultra Arena. It was felt in the rhythm of games repeatedly broken by whistles, in the way momentum turned on a call rather than a basket, and in the fury that rolled through crowds who believed they were watching something more than a contest between two teams. The origins of this controversy trace back to Game 1 in Las Vegas, when the Fever stunned the Aces on their home floor. Indiana's upset seemed to reset the narrative, if only briefly. It offered proof that the Fever had found a way into the series. Physical defense, second chance points, enough shot-making to quiet a building unaccustomed to discomfort. But as the series progressed, the film and the numbers told a different story. The Aces adjusted their coverages, raised the physicality on the perimeter, and found the sort of officiating latitude that every playoff team covets. An accumulation of borderline calls, hand checks here, over-the-back nudges there, an outstretched arm turning a box out into a shove, began to feel, to Indiana's bench and fans, less like the normal playoff elasticity and more like a double standard. By Game 2, the pattern looked familiar. The whistle dictated the pace. Indiana's offense sputtered in fits and starts. The Aces, living at the line, rebuilt rhythm when they could not find it in the half-court. "It's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul called every 10 seconds, White said flatly. "When they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor, and that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively, and we didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. They took us out of our comfort zone. Offense is about rhythm, timing, spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it." That was not an abdication of responsibility. It was a diagnosis. Indiana needed to adjust. But the coach also believed the team was playing into a headwind created by officiating that seemed to penalize the Fever's physicality and absorb the Aces. Game 3 is where the debate caught fire. The sequence that symbolized the tipping point came late in the third quarter, with Indiana pressing full court and the Gainbridge crowd building to a roar. Aya Wilson, the two-time MVP and the Aces' bellwether, drove into contact. A foul on Aaliyah Boston was whistled. White immediately motioned for a review. Under WNBA rules, a team must call a timeout to initiate a coach's challenge. Indiana's bench signaled for it. Seconds bled. The officials did not grant the timeout in time. There would be no review. Chelsea Gray, as clinical as ever in high-leverage possessions, buried a corner 3 seconds later. In under a minute, a potentially pivotal turnover of a foul call turned into a 5-point swing. The building erupted, not in the intoxicating way a great play lifts the roof, but in the hard clap of disbelief. Clips of the exchange hit social media within minutes. Analysts and fans rewound the tape and pointed to both process and outcome. The timeout request appeared clear. The denial felt inexplicable. The Gray 3 felt like insult added to a slight. It is worth noting how the challenge rule works. In the WNBA, a head coach is permitted one coach's challenge per game. The challenge must be requested by calling a timeout immediately after the play in question and before the ball becomes live. Officials can deny the challenge if the timeout is not called in time. On notebook paper, the rule reads clean. In practice, the window is tight, and timing mistakes carry weight. On this night, that weight felt larger than normal because the call in question involved Aaliyah Boston, the Fever's anchor, and a game that had been decided at the margins. Seconds after the denial, Las Vegas hit a shot that became a hinge in the quarter. The emotion in the building needed somewhere to go, and it landed on the nearest available target, the officiating crew. Becky Hammon, whose Aces do not often find themselves in reactive positions, kept it simple after Game 4 when asked to explain her team's loss and the foul disparity. "They shot 34 free throws and we shot 11, she said. Next question. The box score was unforgiving. Indiana attempted 34 free throws to Las Vegas's 11. It was, on its face, the reversal of what Fever fans had been shouting about for 3 games. Hammond's delivery read as exasperation more than analysis. It was the frustration of a coach who has built an elite defensive program that prides itself on discipline. It was also, to Indiana's ears, the sound of a luxury they had not enjoyed in the preceding games. If Game 4 was the outlier, they asked, what were Games 1 through 3? Aya Wilson added a line that poured accelerant on the discourse. Aaliyah said she had a special whistle, Wilson said, noting Boston's 13 free throw attempts in Game 4. It was delivered with a smile. It did not land as a joke. Fever fans, who had watched Wilson accumulate trips to the line in the earlier parts of the series, bristled at the implication. They pointed to the tactical difference. Indiana spent the night, indeed, the series, putting the ball in the paint, sealing early, and forcing the officials to choose between a foul and concession. Las Vegas, outside of Wilson, too often settled for jumpers when Indiana's guards were attacking the body. If there was a special whistle, they argued, it had been tuned to Vegas for most of the series. When Boston finally saw the benefit of deep seals and quick reseals, it looked less like favoritism and more like the inevitable math of a game played within 10 feet rather than 20. The longer series context complicates both teams' claims. Total fouls through 4 games have been roughly even. The free throw disparity swung wildly in Game 4 toward Indiana. In earlier games, the advantage tilted toward Las Vegas to a degree that prompted White's own pointed comments. Officiating is rarely a satisfying variable to study because it resists the kind of clarity both coaches demand. It changes by crew. It changes by building. It changes according to the first few minutes. What frustrates coaches and fans alike is inconsistency. Calls that appear identical and are judged differently, emotions that seem to factor into how a whistle is or is not blown, the invisibility of elbows that clear rebounding space on one end and the immediate tweet of a hand check on the other. What can be studied without suspicion is effort, and here, Indiana's case is strongest. The Fever dominated the glass in the game that turned the free throw narrative on its head, 34-22, with Aaliyah Boston serving as the fulcrum. She did more than score 24 points. She dictated the terms of where shots would come from. She created space for teammates. She punished double teams by finding shooters like Kelsey Mitchell in rhythm. She embodied the kind of interior gravity that forces officials, no matter the crew, to award free throws because the other option is to watch a 6'5" all-star lay the ball in from 2 feet. That is not a conspiracy. It is the geometry of great post play executed with patience. There was another current in these games that cut against the officiating narrative and made the Fever faithful even more defiant. Lexi Hull's story. Back spasms limited her in Game 1. She wore the pain in her posture in warm UPS and on the bench. She was listed as questionable, and for the first few possessions after she checked in during each game, she seemed like she was testing out what her body would permit. And then the whistle blew, the ball found air, and she turned into something more than a role player. Hull put together a stretch across Games 3 and 4 that had the building chanting her name. 16 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal in one outing. 6 of 10 from the field. 3 threes that thudded like messages. On another night, 7 points, 7 rebounds, 4 steals, a block, 38 minutes of making Jackie Young feel every step. Her quote about drawing charges, "I'm just trying to defend as hard as I can. There are only certain screens you're allowed to set. I just trail them. That's all I can really say," became a kind of North Star for Indiana's fans. It suggested a simplicity this series had been lacking. Body hard on routes. Beat the dribble to the spot. Accept the contact. Force the official to make a decision. Hull did it without the star sheen. She did it with a wrap around her midsection. She did it in moments when Ace's runs felt inevitable and turned them into pauses instead. Kelsey Mitchell met the series on its own terms too. 25 points here. Timely bursts there. A long 2 over a late contest that had to go down. A drive left that prompted a rotation and became 1 more assist. Mitchell's ability to supply calm in an arena begging for chaos, and to make enough shots to make everything else work, kept Indiana's half-court offense from fraying when the whistle, tilted or not, threatened to break the rhythm. The Fever did not just attack the rim. They disciplined their possessions and gave themselves chances to absorb whistle runs without unraveling. None of that changes the central complaint that White and her players voiced. The frustration is not merely that calls went one way or the other. It is that some calls never arrived and others could not be reviewed, and still others felt changed by the role of those involved. It is that so many fans packed arenas this year to witness the WNBA's best product in years, only to leave feeling like a procedural error or an invisible bump had decided the outcome. Caitlin Clark is the lightning rod for a lot of this conversation. Fever fans have watched Clark take contact at the rim and on the perimeter without the whistle they have seen awarded at the other end. Nalissa Smith and Aaliyah Boston have fought for position only to see the foul go against them for reasons that escaped a slow-motion replay. Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hull have been whistled for hustles and breath-by bodies, while opponents reaped the rewards of borderline plays that looked, to the eye test, over the line. Social media did what it always does. Threads piled up with clips of elbows under the basket, illegal screens that sprung a three, play-by-play breakdowns of contact that turned into free throws on one end and no calls on the other. Some of the reactions shaded into conspiracy, words like rigging and agenda thrown around by fans who will not accept that officials are human and games are complex. But stripped of the noise, the underlying message carried weight. This season, more than any in recent memory, pushed the WNBA into the national sports conversation. Ratings records fell. Arenas filled. The sport's biggest stars expanded into television segments and social feeds that had never paid sustained attention. The product inside the lines has to match that moment. When it doesn't, the league owes the public a clear explanation for why. That is what made White's broad appeal for accountability land differently. "We can't allow that to consume us," she said in the same breath as her critique. "We've got to be able to play through that. We've got to be able to control the things that we can control." And then the reset, but what's been happening, is disappointing. The call for a league-wide investigation into officiating is not an attack on the individual crews working these games. It is a demand for transparent systems. The NBA learned this lesson the hard way. It introduced last 2-minute reports to give the public post-game clarity on calls in the final moments. It improved training and evaluation. It installed coaches' challenges and expanded replay triggers to give coaches a tool to contest rotating judgments. The WNBA can build on that template. The league's referees work year-round, often across multiple leagues and tournaments. No one questions the commitment. But the WNBA's surge requires governance that keeps pace. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has emphasized growth. This is part of that work.